Okay. Holly. Has anyone heard of Dr. Johnson's planning to be here this evening?
I'll send her a note.
Okay, thanks.
Are we live, Charlene?
Live.
Okay. Is Mr. Crawford planning to join us this evening?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you. Give Dr. Johnson another minute or two, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Should we go ahead and get started? Okay, then we'll go ahead and get started. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in this evening. We appreciate your interest in our meeting. This is the Maryland State Board of Education Education Policy Monthly Meeting. This evening, we have 3 COMAR regulation items on the agenda and our legislative review. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started on our agenda that starts with COMAR 13A.15 Family Childcare, 13A.16 Childcare Center, 13A.17 Letters of Compliance. There's a lot of numbers. 13A.18 Large Family Childcare Homes, Safe Sleep. This is a permission to adopt with non-substantive changes. So, Dr. Cook, should I assume you're presenting?
Yes.
All right, then I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
All right. Good evening to the Education Policy Committee. I'm bringing before you proposed regulations for adoption now, particularly on safe sleep in childcare settings that are aligned with the latest research and recommendations from the American Academy of Pediatrics, or the AAP. In addition, these regs have all items related to sleep, cribs, portable cribs, playpens, adhering to a set of safety standards set by the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission. This mandate is particularly focused on sleep services for children under 12 months old. And best practice for those children are for infants to be on firm, flat, non-inclined surfaces unless otherwise specified in writing from a physician or other licensed health provider. What this guidance does is really ensures that the state of Maryland's licensed and registered programs are aligned with American Academy of Pediatric guidance and reduces the risk of sudden infant death syndrome, or SIDS. In addition, these proposed regulations provide guidance to child care providers on tummy time, and we ensure that tummy time guidance is in alignment with the current American Academy of Pediatric guidance. And it would be for short periods of time, age appropriate, And really, tummy time is crucial for child development and well-being. This regulation received a lot of support, particularly from the Office of Child Care Advisory Council. We did receive one public comment in regard to these regulations, and it was specifically focused on the proposed language prohibiting weighted rest items, including swaddles. And really, this commenter focused on how that regulation might be interpreted incorrectly because it wasn't in the correct section of COMAR with other swaddling prohibitions. So in response, MSC moved the proposed language from rest furnishings to rest time safety so that it would be in the proper context. So to be clear, the regulations prohibit swaddling in general and also prohibit weighted swaddles. And that was the very minor and non-substantive change that was made by MSTE. We are requesting the state board, and particularly right now this committee, to grant permission to adopt these amendments to COMAR. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have questions for Dr. Cook? Mr. Paul?
Yeah, quick just information question as a person who's not yet a father. Could you just give me like a 2-sentence explanation of the controversy around swaddling, just so I know?
Absolutely.
Or like why it's prohibited, for example.
Absolutely. So swaddling is prohibited because it can lead to sudden infant death syndrome. The recommendation is that infants are in something called sleep sacks, which keep the baby warm, aren't blankets that could lead to suffocation, so that it covers the baby. But the baby's not so restricted that it could lead to sudden infant death syndrome.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing no questions, I'll take a motion from members of the committee on a recommendation to adopt a recommendation to the larger board at our next board meeting to adopt these regulations. So moved by Mr. Paul. Second? Seconded by Dr. Melly McCarthy. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, I will call for a vote. If you are in favor of recommending adoption to the larger board at our next board meeting, please raise your hand and say aye, members of the committee only. Looks like we pass unanimously. Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you, Dr. Cook.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is COMAR 13A.07.02.01 contracts. This is a permission to publish. And I am not 100% sure who is presenting this.
Miss Meadows.
It's Ms. Meadows. Thank you. Ms. Meadows, if you could go ahead and begin your presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, members of the committee. Thank you. As Ms. McCusker just shared, the purpose of this item is to request permission to publish amendments to COMAR 13A070201, which is the contracts regulation. This particular regulation establishes the language of both the regular contract and the provisional contract, two contracts that are widely used throughout our local education agencies. The sole amendments that you're going to see tonight are with regard to transitioning the word certificate and certification to license and licensure. No other substantive changes were made to these amendments. And that is to align to the newly adopted licensure regulations. As you know, we've transitioned away from the word certification and moved toward licensure.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have questions for Ms. Meadows? Nobody? Okay. Seeing no questions, then I will again ask for a motion to recommend this to the larger board for permission to publish. Does anyone care to make the motion? Dr. Maley McCarthy, and seconded by Mr. Paul. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, I will call for a vote. So we're voting to recommend permission to publish to the larger board at the next board meeting. All in favor, say aye and raise your hand, please. Aye. Looks like we've passed unanimously again. Excellent. Wow, we're just chugging along tonight. Okay. Next on our agenda is COMAR 13A.08.02.17, school use of reportable offenses. This is permission to republish. Is this Dr. Gable presenting?
Yeah,
All right, I'm going to turn it over to you, Dr. Gable. Thank you.
thank you. Thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to come before this regulation, which is on reportable offenses. So I did come before you in preparation for the January 23rd, 2024 State Board meeting. And at that time, I explained that for the regulation, which came to the board for a permission to publish in July, was published between October 6th and November 6th. We had 3 letters. And based on the review of all of those items, it was determined, and we shared with our AG, that there were 3 recommendations that we accepted and that they would be substantive changes. Those recommendations were that a student with a disability, it means a student, that's not the one, that the notice of the arrest for reportable offense may not be the sole basis for the change of the student's regular school program. So one, to make sure that a student reportable offense comes and that does not automatically mean a change in the student's regular program. The second item was a recommendation that really followed from, I think, a state board item to make sure that when a student got a letter for removal, to make sure that within that letter, there was receipt of the written determination and notice of the appeal rights, so that the parents knew that they understood what was happening as a result of being informed of result of the work that the principal and others had done, and that they had notice of the appeal rights. And the third item was that in addition to appropriate educational programming and related service shall be provided to a student identified with disability, that in addition to a student with a disability, that it would also include a student with a 504 plan, section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. Those 3 items were accepted, and I believe we had no questions at that time. There was a question that came out from a member of the board, Dr. Johnson, who questioned to make sure that the principal was involving other folks in the decision. So when the reportable offense comes to the superintendent, who notifies the principal, then the principal, in consultation and language that already exists, that is part of the regulation, says the school principal, in consultation with appropriate staff members, shall consider whether the student's presence presents a risk to the safety of other students and staff. So the concern was to make sure that the principal did work with some other appropriate staff. One suggestion was the student support team. We are not recommending that we add that because the language does say that the principal makes a determination of the appropriate staff who should be involved in this. Just as a reminder, this really is confidential information that should be given to the appropriate individuals to make a determination. So the principal should and must, by regulation, involve appropriate staff. Not everyone has the same kind of school support team, so we're recommending that we not use a particular term to enable the principal to engage those that need to be engaged. So at this point, we are requesting of this committee and then ultimately of the state board that COMAR 13A.08.01.17 go before the come before the board to be reposted for permission to publish. So it will go out if you approved it, it will go out again. We'll get comments, we'll bring it back, and it will come back to the board.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gable. Does anyone have any questions? No? Okay, seeing no questions then, I will entertain a motion to recommend permission to republish to the larger board.
So moved.
So moved
Dr.
by
Wilcox is
Dr.
first.
Michael and Dr. Wilcox second. I kind of all went simultaneously, so we'll have both of them, please. Okay, any discussion?
Dr. Johnson, did you have your hand up too?
No?
Okay, all right.
Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, then we will vote on the motion to recommend permission to publish to the broader board at the next board meeting. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye, please. Aye. Looks, Dr. Johnson, is your hand, thank you very much. Looks unanimous. Okay. Wow, that was record time. Okay. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate staff members' time for coming in this evening. I'm glad we didn't hold you forever. We appreciate your time and your incredible professionalism in bringing these items and to us ahead of the board meeting. And with that, we are going to move forward to our legislative review. We are coming into the part of session known as crossover on Monday, where in general, if we look for bills to be crossed over to both sides, both chambers of the legislation by this time, in order for bills in general to be viable. So we're at a really interesting juncture in the legislative session. So I'm going to turn it over to, turning it over to Mr. Hands or Dr. Aileen?
I will go ahead and get things started a little earlier
Great,
on the
thank you.
docket than I expected, but that's
There
okay.
you go.
So good evening, members of the committee, MSD staff. We're more than 2/3 of the way through legislative session. Things are moving very quickly in these last couple of days before crossover, and it's been a busy year for MSDE and the state board so far. You should have a relatively updated copy of where the bills we are tracking stand. As Chair McCusker mentioned already, the crossover date or the date by which the House or Senate should pass to the other chamber anything it intends to move on favorably is this upcoming Monday. So it's a kind of a mad dash in both the House and the Senate right now. It's an important date to get things through on at least one side of the street. And bills that don't pass by that date are saddled with a somewhat significant procedural hurdle of having to get their bill through the Rules Committee in the other chamber, even if they do get it passed in where it originates. So it doesn't necessarily mean that a bill is completely inviable or incapable of passing, but it does make it more difficult. And we've certainly seen some bills jump through those hurdles in the last couple of weeks. So we will keep an eye on things even if they don't make it through crossover. As you'll see on the tracker that you have, we are up to about 60 bills that we have been following that have moved so far as of this evening. I think that's now closer to 70 just from today. And I guarantee that there will be even more in the next few days. Just a few pretty high level ones that I wanted to provide a couple of quick updates on that you had taken positions on already. Senate Bill 771, House Bill 945 on initial teacher certification. The bill seeks to expand pathways to teacher licensure for aspiring educators. The board and MSDE were support with amendments on this bill originally, and both board and MSDE staff have worked extensively with the bill sponsors, MSEA, AIB, and others to come to a series of amendments that are agreeable to everyone to ensure that multiple measures are in place to meet standards for teacher certification. Those amendments have moved through most of the process so far in the House and the Senate. I believe the last time I checked before I came on this evening, they were still on third reading and hadn't gone through final passage yet. So we'll continue to track those and any other amendments and be sure to bring them to the board as they develop. Another one was Senate Bill 1058, House Bill 1181. This was the Educate to Stop the Hate curriculum bill. The board had initially voted to oppose the bill. However, after significant amendments in the Senate, we have come to concurrence on some language that would alter what was originally a number of curricular mandates, but would instead embed our process for standard and framework review in a number of places. So that the Senate version of this bill is moving. I believe it's also on third reading for final passage, and is in a place that I think the board and MSDE are more comfortable with, but we'll continue to follow that as it unfolds. The last one I wanted to mention, this one is still developing too. House Bill 200, Senate Bill 161. This is a community schools alterations bill. You all voted to support this bill early in session back in January. In its original form, the bill gives flexibility to LEAs with less than 40 community schools the ability to utilize 10% of their concentration of poverty grant funds at the central office level, particularly to provide some flexibility to smaller jurisdictions that don't currently have that. It also established a common needs assessment for community schools and gave MSDE approval over the needs assessment and community school implementation plans that they have to submit. There have been a number of amendments to that bill, and they have a different posture in the House and the Senate currently. So we have been working pretty diligently with a number of partners to stay up to date on amendments to the bill, and hopefully we'll have an update soon as that continues to go through. I think those are the three highest level ones I wanted to cover right now, but I'll happily turn it over to Dr. Aileen or Ms. Kratzley if they wanted to add anything.
I think you nailed it, Zach.
And happy to take any questions as well.
Okay, any questions from anyone in the committee? No? Jeez, man. Okay. Well, I would personally like to give a shout out to the entire team. I absolutely cannot tell you, members of the public, how hard this legislative team has been working behind the scenes to keep the state board informed of everything that's going on during the session, to assess the bills and how they affect MSDE and the day-to-day operations of MSDE, and to work with stakeholders, members of the legislature, to come up with amendments and amendment language that still keeps the intent of the bill, but allows it to be something that works for MSDE and the state board and for our broader stakeholders. It has been an amazing lift by this team, and I just wanted to give them a shout out because they are doing incredible work. They make the rest of us look good. We are really jumping along here quickly, much earlier than I thought, which is, okay with me. Does anyone have anything they want to add this evening? If not, I would like to just really quickly jump forward to our April meeting. We meet again on April the 10th at 6:30. At that time, Dr. Wilcox will be bringing some policy or at least information with Dr. Gable related to traumatic events, particularly involving the death of a student during the school year, and best practices for how that's handled, by mental health standards. It is a topic of passion for Dr. Wilcox. And so we're hoping to bring forward some information about that, about best practices, what's already in place in some of our locals or in our MSD policy, and see if we can't make sure all of that is aligning. Dr. Wilcox, did you want to take a minute or two since we're running early to say anything about that? I mean, we're going to bring all the information next time, but did you care to make a couple comments?
No, I just was trying to think of a way to be more prepared and to have policies that can be sorry, that schools can customize for their own student and family population, and that could help them to be prepared in the instance where a student dies by suicide or another cause. And, you know, thinking about communications to families and what's best practiced in that area. And other states have taken the stance of giving support to LEAs to have those policies. They're called suicide prevention policies and postvention plans. And so it could be specifically for suicide, or it could be across other traumatic events. And so sorry for the background noise, but that will be what we'll be covering at that point. Thank you.
I think it's really important work. Thank you for bringing it to the forefront, and I look forward to finding out what we have in place and what we can do to make sure everyone has best practices aligned to that, because postvention is a really important thing for schools to wrap themselves around. All right. Any questions, comments for the good of the group? Oh my gracious. We are adjourned at the hour of 6:57. It's still light outside. I hardly know what to do with myself. Thank you everybody for the incredibly hard work you've been putting in behind the scenes that got us rocking and rolling tonight. And I look forward to seeing everybody back on April 10th for our next meeting. And thank you again to the public for their attention to our meeting and any of our work. If you need any more information, we do have a link on the MSDE and State Board website. And again, thank you very much to MSDE staff who stayed late this evening to support our work. And with that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.